Hello and welcome, my fellow Wasteland survivors. I'm Dean, aka Nasty Bones, and I'm hanging out today with one of my survival characters, August. Say hi, August. Okay, well, apparently she's too good to say hi or too busy. Well, we have just left Nuka World, and we're at the part where we need to build 3 Raider Outposts. We decided on Sunshine Tidings to be our main Raider Outpost. It's not too far from Nuka World. It is survival, and it's not too far of a walk. What I didn't want to do is scrap all the items here. I want to keep all the junk, or as much of it as I can. So I'm trying to use these pre-existing frames, and I'm just placing some sleeping bags on them with group select. Now what I've done is it took a couple of times to find the correct height, and once I did, I made a jig so that way I could repeat this process over several times. If you don't know what a jig is, it's just something you'll set up to repeat a process over and over and over and over again. And as you can see, all I have to do is take out the middle concrete pillar, group select the bottom, take it on in, place it where I'd like it to, go back out, snap my pieces in, rinse and repeat. And here in a second I'll have them all in, and this is going to look pretty good. This is a great way to utilize these frames that are in this room without scrapping them. Yeah, that looks great. It's going to work out good. Now, the next thing I wanted to work on was my main entrance. I didn't make any tips and tricks clips in this video on how I did this. I figure that most of you by now know how to kind of do this. I just used a concrete pillar, group select, to do most of this build. I used a couple of the outhouses, sank one into the ground, put another one on top with a concrete pillar, picked them both up, moved them out here. Like I said, nothing real complicated. I didn't feel it warranted video time. Now, the concept of my wall is so that when I'm being attacked, I can go up there and the wall semi-protects me while I'm shooting the enemies. This is one of 3 spawn locations, enemy spawn locations here at Sunshine Tidings. The second one is a little bit farther to our left. Okay, enough of this. Let's get to building. Now, what I want to do here is make a big old floor, and it's going to match the floor of our pre-existing building. Now, since I couldn't put a floor right up against the building to try to line it up, I'm doing it 1 floor away. I've already adjusted this particular floor so the floor that I snapped in is lined up to the building the best that I could get it. There is a little bit of a gap there, and it's pretty tight on this end. I could have adjusted that just a little bit more, but it'll be okay for now. Okay, what my idea is to make this a spot to put my vendors, to put all my stores here. And instead of having a square end, I want to make kind of a curve. And as you can see, I've already got some markers out. And I'm ready to go ahead and install the floor. But before I do, I'd like to go ahead and show you guys how I do this. With the tips and tricks that I'm about ready to show you, you can actually snap the floors into one another, making it one completely solid floor. It won't have a stair-step effect to it. Okay, first thing I want to do is place a full floor down. Now I do take a second here and try to line it up with the bottom pre-existing floor, but it really doesn't make any difference. I am having a little bit of a problem here putting the second piece down because it keeps wanting to snap out there, so let's just go ahead and put one in. We'll place one down, and you could actually go in a full circle around, but since the wall is hurting me over there, I'm not going to place one on the right hand side. Now, since my floor is a little bit small here, or my floor area, I'm just going to go ahead and use this half a floor in the barn section. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and line these corners up. But if you notice, see how it's jumping in the air? Sometimes if you spin it around, the other side will have a more generous collision area to it. And I'll just keep adjusting this the best that I can until I can get all three corners to line up perfectly. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. You get the idea. We could repeat it on the right hand side as well. But you want to get it as close as you can without actually pressing into the other piece. And as you can see there how close I've got each one of those corners. Like I said, take a little bit of time, get it as perfect as you can. If not, you may run into future collision issues. Now, the next thing I'd like to talk about is build order. If you notice, I'm not able to get that floor to snap in straight, or the way the original middle of the floor is going. So I had to take out the sides. And when you're building with these objects and manipulating them like that, keep in mind if they're not doing what you want them to do, try a different build order. And as you can see, the floor pieces are snapping in perfectly. Now I could have snapped another floor in right there where the half a floor is, but I still would have had the little gaps. If I would work with this a little bit, I could probably put quarter floorboards in there and cover those gaps up. But I actually plan on putting some posts in to hold an upper ceiling. So having the little gaps there will not hurt us one bit because posts will be going in there, or supports. Now also keep in mind when you're putting these objects in and your different angles that you're trying to get, sometimes they'll snap to a different angle. Always check and make sure your piece is snapped in correctly before you take your markers out. And as you can see, now I've got that piece in correctly. But on this end over here, it's not correct. So we need to take it out and snap it in correctly. Once again, build order comes into place. I need to take out the objects that are going to hinder me and place the other ones in accordingly. And anytime that you make adjustments to this, you'll need to repeat that process. Sometimes they just won't go in unless you have other pieces out or in before them. Now the reason I'm using a wooden barn floor in the center is there's a rock there. And no matter how much I tried, I actually couldn't get a concrete barn floor to set in there. So I ended up having to use a wooden floor because that was the only thing that would penetrate the rock. Okay, let's turn our attention to our ceiling. And I want to use those curved metal walls that you find, of course, in the metal section. And I want to see if I can actually make a curve using those walls as well. Now I'm going to need to use my markers for this because I want it to match up with the floor. So I'm going to take all these pieces out so that way I can use the markers to snap those floors in. And to help me do that, I'm going to use this shack stairwell. We'll go ahead, snap it to our marker, and then let's go ahead and put one of the curved walls on there. I think this really curved one is what I want to use. We'll go ahead and take a look at it. Yeah, that's not going to work. The reason that's not working is because the ladder is snapped to the marker. And when I snap the wall onto it, it puts it too far out. So we're going to need to add a spacer in at the bottom to move our ladder back. And what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and pull out a little half of floor out of the barn section, snap it on there. It's not wanting to go because of the damn rock. Okay, this is what we'll do. We'll use a full floor on the bottom, then we'll use a half at the top so that way we can snap our wall to it. And that should move us in right over the floor. Perfect, it does. That'll line up. Now the question is, can we get other pieces to snap into itself so that it curves around with our floor? So I'll move the stairwell over to the next floor piece, snap the half of floor in at the top, and come on baby, do it for us. Yeah, it's snapping, and it did. Alright. I already knew it was going to. Sorry if I made it a big deal. But a lot of people, I don't think, know that those pieces will snap into one another if you kind of do things a certain way. So we'll move to the other side and snap one in there as well. And as you can see, I've got no gap. They've snapped inside to one another. And it's going to look pretty cool. It's going to match our floor and our ceiling. And we'll put a few posts in there or supports in to look like it's holding it up. And that should really look pretty awesome. So we'll just continue this process all the way around. I've got to move things around so that I can get the ladder in. And snapola. Now we could have used the ladders in the barn section as well to make this a little taller. But it was already going to be pretty tall, and I didn't want it to overpower the pre-existing building that we're building up to. Okay, while I snap up a few more walls, let me explain why this is working. 99 point whatever percent of the time, you can get two floors to snap inside of one another. But there are a few limitations. If you have less than 50% of the board sticking out, it won't snap into the object that you're trying to snap it into. But if you have a little more than 50% sticking out, generally it will snap into another floor. This also applies to some of the ceilings. You just have to experiment with which ones it works with, which ones it don't work with. Now, there's one final thing to keep in mind. Even though we might have gotten two boards to penetrate each other, it is virtually impossible to get three to penetrate each other. But the way we did this, only two are connected at any point of the build. We just replace our floor, and this part of the build is done. Okay, let's move over to our roof, our ceiling, and let's see what we can do here. Now, because this is offset by 1/2 of a floor, it's not going to work. And the reason is, as you can see, three of these objects are trying to collide with one another or penetrate one another. And it just won't work. So what I've got to do is put up some floors. And I'm going to use these angled boards that we find in the concrete section to do it. Now the ceiling is off one thickness of a concrete wall. And the reason is because of the curve that we've made in the end. So what I'm going to do is show you a quick tip how we can move the floor one width of a concrete wall. It's as simple as adding a wall to it, snapping a concrete pillar on, moving the wall, and that quick we have moved the floor. One thickness of a concrete wall. Now we'll go ahead and snap up the rest of our floors, see how it looks. The gap that we were experiencing before should be gone now. And we'll just go ahead and move these down, add in some more floor pieces, and there is still a little bit of a gap there, but I really don't think it's going to matter. That looks pretty good. I'm satisfied with how that looks. And I don't have a square floor piece sticking out giving me a corner when we look at it from the outside. Now the only thing that's really left to do is to try to figure out something to go in that end so that, it looks like a wall. And now this is what the finished product looks like. I've got a few posts in, or supports holding it up. I've got a few of the junky wood railings around. And, I'm really, really happy with the way this looks. And as you could see, we didn't have to do any kind of, modding or group selecting or anything like that. We got it to all pretty much snap together on its own. Okay, let's take a little look and see how it looks. I'm going to make this a two-story. So what I did is I went ahead and kind of snapped in my floors just like how we did at the bottom. Now we could have got the ceiling to snap like this for us if they would give us a half a ceiling, like they give us a half a floor. But since they don't, we can't. And you can see the floor looks real nice. Everything's all super even. Even if I didn't put these little metal posts in or supports in, a carpet would cover that and you would never even notice it. Or like I said earlier, if you worked with a little bit, you might be able to get a quarter floor to snap in. And you can see just how nice that blends right in to this floor that's a pre-existing build. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all very much for coming and hanging out with August and I today at Sunshine Tidings. Hopefully you'll join us on the next video, because the build we're doing is something you're just not going to see every day in Fallout. Believe me. And just like always, until next time, please stay safe and peace.